Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, aka the guy who's dying to find out if he's immortal or not, and this video we're breaking down episode 6 of Invincible. The entry is packed with tons of callbacks to the comics, as well as some big deviations that never happened in the source material. There's also a huge thing being teased through the Immortal, and it could hint to Nolan's secret coming out soon. We're going to be breaking it all down, but this is a spoiler warning for the show and parts of the comic up until this point. If you enjoy the video, then please drop a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe for videos like this each and every day. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Invincible. Okay, so up top, I want to add in some Easter eggs that we missed last time. Firstly is one of the coolest callbacks I've ever seen, and in the show we watch as Mark attends Reginald VelJohnson High School. Now the actor Reginald VelJohnson plays Principle Winslow, and why this is crazy is because he also played Carl Winslow in Family Matters. To make things even weirder, Principle Winslow in the comics looked exactly like how he does in the show, and in the show he looks like Reginald VelJohnson, making for one mind-blowing Easter egg. In episode 1 we were also introduced to Martian Man and saw him with a young girl at one point. Omni-Man of course killed the superhero, and it doesn't look like things have gotten better for said girl because last week you could catch her in the homeless shelter. Yay, what an uplifting storyline. Now at the end of episode 3 in the Supermax prison we could also catch Duplicate's brother Multiple, but whether he's gonna be in the show more we'll just have to wait and see. Now episode 6 primarily centers around mad scientist D.A. Sinclair. In the comics he first showed up in issue 20, which just so happened to follow on immediately after the Titan Crime Boss one. This happens way later than a lot of stuff in the series, such as the first chapter in the Omni-Man arc, showing that they are reordering a lot of things. The episode is very much a compression of Sinclair's entire arc, and in the comics when he first showed up we discovered he'd been reanimating the dead in order to make them killer robots known as Reaniman. The end of issue 22 was when he decided to start using live test subjects, and he was absent for over a year in the comics, not returning until issue 36. 37 was where the arc culminated, but they kinda pushed everything together from these issues into one big story. The arc about first creating the Reaniman from corpses is just hinted at, and instead we jump immediately into DA kidnapping live test subjects from Upstate University. This was the one that Mark was actually attending in the comics when DA started his criminal activities, but for the show he's still in high school. Elsewhere, Mark, Monster Girl and Black Samson are rushed into ER after they were brutally beaten by Battle Beast last week. The doctors are almost killed when trying to operate on her, and I feel this is somewhat a callback to Spider-Man 2, namely the Dr. Octopus scene in the hospital. Robot is the only one who can operate on her, and we learn that he has studied her physiology. In issue 15 of the comics, the character actually took a skin sample from her, which does explain this moment. None of these operation scenes were present in the source material, and in fact it was Bulletproof that was almost killed by Battle Beast. To add more, Mark's recovery is far greater, and whereas in the original work he just ended up with some cuts and plasters, here he's out for 6 days. Now personally I love this extra character development, and it helps to show how much of a bad father that Nolan is. After seeing that he was present when the fight was going on, we know that he has a much darker side to him, and all of the characters around him are becoming victim to it. From here we see the continuation of Cecil's suspicions, and he keeps up the lie that Damien Darkblood is the one suspected of killing the Guardians. As we know, Nolan placed their blood in his office in order to frame him, and while Cecil and co study Mark's blood in order to find a weakness for the Viltrumites, they have to pretend that Omni-Man is in the clear. However, the conversation that Cecil and Nolan have is very much laced with the subtext that the former is asking the latter exactly why he did it. Nolan gives the answer that he's a demon, which is why, and though this isn't to be taken literally, Omni-Man of course has a devilish side to him, and this confirms Mephisto. Wrong show. Now the two also discuss Viltrum and how on the planet teenagers listen to their parents. This showcases that their civilization has a lot of order to it, and though I can't talk about the big things without spoiling too much, let's just say Viltrumites are very encouraged to join the World Betterment Committee when they come of age. This makes them believe that Viltrum is supreme, and they go planet to planet instilling their ways throughout the galaxy. This very much juxtaposes Mark's attitude, and Nolan clearly hates that his son disobeyed him, and thus he's willing to see him suffer because of it. Potentially, this shows that he wants Mark on his side, and he's allowed him to see that if he doesn't listen to him, bad things will happen. Mark pretends he's been hit by a car, and after making things right with Amber, we jump to him and his best friend William. Throughout the entry, we see William and Rick develop their relationship, and later learn that the latter has been kidnapped by Sinclair. Rick and William actually end up dating in the comics, so I appreciate that there's some lip service paid to them dating throughout. Cut to Mark's room, and we can see him packing, and also catch on the wall the Science Dog poster, which resembles Doctor Strange. Now, I forgot to mention last time that this is actually playing on Science Dog, a character that somewhat shows up in issue 25 of the comics. They've changed him up quite a lot for this, making him magic instead of the way that he was originally. Atom Eve arrives, and she states she's realised that the cape shit isn't the best way to save people, and that she can make an actual difference helping them on a human level. In the comics, the character actually went to Africa, mainly to find solitude, whereas here they've changed it up quite a lot. Though she builds an African-looking treehouse, she still remains in what looks like America and helps at home rather than abroad. In issue 22, she flew into an African village and changed the landscape into luscious Greenland, but here she stops a forest fire, rock slide, and creates crops for some farmers. Either way, it adds a lot to the character in my opinion, and showcases that you can be a hero in ways other than just fighting bad guys. In issue 20 of the comics, a similar conversation happened where Eve talked about how everyone underestimated her, and it's nice that they do sort of echo it here. She is a character that can control reality, but she's been reduced to simply fighting bank robbers and aliens because of the role that she's found herself in. It adds way more to her, and we get the idea that she's actually in it for the right reasons, whereas most of the other teen team were after the glory. We see an interaction that she has with her father, who says he wants nothing more than for her to have a normal life, but she disobeys him and continues to help people out. This idea of standing against one's parents is very much something that I think is foreshadowing the arc that Mark will go on, and I believe that he will wrestle with siding with his father or against him as we go further into the season. As soon as Mark leaves, we see Debbie drop the facade, and Nolan realizes that something is up, which is when he checks his costume. I kind of have a bit of a problem with this storyline, as I don't know why Omni-Man would have hid the costume here when the guy is able to travel to the sun in a second, and there's so many other places on the planet he could have put it to not arouse suspicion. Either way, speaking of aroused, William gets that when he checks out Rick's butt, and we also see a tour of the campus. It's littered with missing posters, namely one for Doug Chesterton, who was of course kidnapped at the start of the episode. There's also a house party one, which becomes a big plot motif later on. The group go to a lecture which is interrupted by DA Sinclair, which is pretty much ripped directly out of the comics, namely issue 20 once more. However, they add more to it, as this is where Sinclair meets Rick, and he realises that he's an alpha male. Later on he spies on him, and this plotline didn't appear until 2 issues later, when he just simply smacked him on the head as he was going to his room. Amber and Mark spend some uninterrupted time together, and they decide to both attend the university. However, the piece is disturbed by the arrival of one of the Reaniman, and it lets us know that no matter how much Mark tries to have a normal life, things like this will always disrupt it. Whereas Nolan was happy to sit around and have dinner with his wife, Mark's duty and responsibility simply won't allow him to, and he sacrifices his image to Amber in order to be a saviour. The action scene is ripped straight out of issue 20 once more, and these Robocop-inspired enemies are some of the most memorable foes that Mark encounters. Due to this fight, William too discovers that Mark is invincible, which alters things slightly from the source material, as he figured it out by just kind of putting everything together. It was pretty obvious, let's be honest. Now the Reaniman goes mad upon seeing his reflection, and he impales himself in order to end the living hell that he's trapped in. Elsewhere, Robot visits Monster Girl in the hospital, and he carries with him a rare blue flower that's come from the Arctic. Might be reaching here, but I think that this is a reference to Batman Begins, in which Bruce had to retrieve one in order to continue his journey. Now Robot somewhat gives the game away a bit here, as he shows he has drones and several bodies. Samson also realises that he has an attachment to Monster Girl, hinting to him being more than just an android. We later see him with the Maulers, and they are halfway through the cloning process, having already duplicated most of Rexplode's internal organs. After realising that Robot will likely double cross them, they go and dig up the Immortal in order to have some insurance. This is actually how the episode ends, and it's a big deviation from the source material, in that they actually brought him back to life before any of the cloning plot, and this was requested by Robot. After the ending of episode 3, I did think that this would be the direction that they would be heading, but it's nice that they've switched things up, and it does allow for things to differentiate from the comics. At Arts, Debbie and he discover that Nolan was the one who killed the Guardians, due to the marks in his outfit having the signatures of their weapons and abilities. This is a big change up from the comics, as neither discovered this on their own, and I actually think that because of this, Nolan will kill Art. This isn't something that happened in the source material at all, but obviously he doesn't want this getting out, and the less people that know, the better. I think that after this, Nolan will struggle with whether to kill his wife or not, and it might be something that he has to make a tough decision over. Say he did kill her, or even harmed her, then this is something that his relationship with Mark would simply never recover from. To make matters worse, Mark looks like a lot of the relationships he has with people close to him are going to be destroyed when Amber meets Kyle. Now, though this is a brand new character, I think it might be based on Gary from the comics, who predominantly appears in issue 40 and 41. He creates somewhat of a love square between Amber, Mark and Eve, and very much adds another dynamic. At one point, Amber and Gary hang out, and he gets called by his boss, who wants him to go into work. He says no because he wants to spend time with Amber, and this very much juxtaposes how Mark constantly rushes off. It makes her question her feelings for him, and though we don't know how the relationship is going to develop, it does seem like it might be following a similar sort of route. Mark attends the party but has to bail out before he can repair the damage because William has decided to go into the sewers. Like issue 36 and 37, Will is strapped down to the operating table, and we discover that Rick has been made into a monster. His helmet is removed, and at this point he looks extremely similar to Peter Weller in RoboCop. He's under a trance, but when William gets personal, he recalls his life and frees himself. William goes wild on DA, and Invincible breaks his jaw for his crimes against humanity. He does survive though, and in the comics we discover that Cecil has basically taken him into his employ. Mark returns disheveled, and Amber lies awake, feeling down about him. However, Eve returns to her bed, feeling happy for once, and we watch as Nolan then returns home. Whenever you walk in late at night and find your wife in the dark drinking wine, you know it's gonna kick off, and kick off it does. Debbie comes straight out with it and says she knows he killed the Guardians, but he denies the allegations and then starts to gaslight her. Nolan puts a hole in the wall, and we close out on him with his hole surrounding him, metaphorically symbolising the one that he's dug himself into. This hole digging symbolism is carried across to the credits scene, which is set in a graveyard, and it involves Matt, who you may remember from the start of episode 2. His stepfather opened episode 1, and the pair travel to London for the follow-up entry. He and his friend believe that if they dig the Immortal up and drink from his skull, that they'll get his powers because one of them read it on Reddit. However, they're stopped by the Maulers, and full spoilers ahead from this point onwards in regards to the Immortal and Robot. Now in the comics, as mentioned, the Maulers brought the Immortal back. Upon waking, he of course remembered that Omni-Man had murdered him, and he went after him, which put a time limit on Nolan's actions. With us having just 2 episodes left, I can see that being the case, and thus he will be pushed to move forward with the big reveal. As for Robot, in the comics when the Maulers moved his mind into the Rex clone, he betrayed them and said he was sending them back to jail. The character used a drone to do this, but if they now have the Immortal on their side, then it might turn the tide in stopping this from happening. Either way, it's going to be interesting to see what goes down, and I have to say this was another great episode. In the comics, the culmination of the Mars arc happened immediately after the Reaniman one, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be getting that next week. Now obviously I'd love to hear your thoughts, so make sure you comment below and let me know. As a thank you for interacting with the video, you'll be entered into a prize draw on the 30th of April, in which we're giving away 3 copies of Zack Snyder's Justice League in 4K. All you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the episode. The winners of last month's competition are on screen right now, so if that's you, then message me on Twitter at Heavy Spoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of the last episode, which will be linked on screen right now. We've gone over the entire thing from top to bottom, so it's definitely worth checking out if you want to know more. With that out of the way, thank you for sticking through the video. I've been Paul, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.